As a prerequisite to this video, you must watch Fixing Pixelated Lines, where I clean up all the line work here with a few strokes of filters and effects. So what we're going to be looking at is this. These are overlays. Let's make a new layer. And here I have this monster. Well, this monster is set to multiply. It's just line art, black and white, and I lock the layer. So once you switch it over to multiply, I would highly suggest locking it. This way you can't paint on it. That's the number one, students always paint on this layer by accident. So I always teach them to lock it. If I make a layer just below it, I'm going to take a brush and just a very basic boring brush and start painting. And you can see what happens. Since this one's set to multiply, all the dark values are left alone. I can't color over the lines because the lines are on top, but all the white values are actually transparent. This is a great way to color in artwork. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of color in an area real quick. And if I use a hard edge brush, I can do it in half the time. Let me just color a small area so we can kind of experiment. Alright, we'll treat this one area as the area at which we'll begin just lightening and darkening things. Let's say I want to lighten an area. What I like to do is set this to a lower value of opacity, make a new layer, and set this one to overlay. If I use the same color here, you'll see that it starts lightening it. And it lightens it to the most saturated color, blue, which really, if you choose the color picker, this is the color I'm using now, it's ramping it to here. Okay? So that's what overlay does. It ramps it to the highly saturated level of blue, whatever you got as far as a color. If it was red, it was a dark red, it would saturate it to the highest value of red. So this is how it goes. If you want to darken something, these are the ones. If you want to lighten something corresponding to white, we'll look at that here in a second, these are the ones. And if you just want to ramp a color to the brightest level, these are the ones. Let's say I wanted to go to white. This will get me purple, but if I go up here to also choose linear dodge add, so I'm doubling the effect. And you can see it'll keep going and going, and sooner or later you'll get white. Alright, so that's how you lighten things. Now, what I could do to kind of even it out is make a new layer, set it to multiply. Well, what does multiply do? Multiply tints things or darkens areas. So now you can see everything's getting a little bit darker. Now also though, I have this set to linear dodge add, so you should probably never darken and lighten something at the same time, but if you want to build some texture, that's a cool way to do it. So remember, these are darken, these are lighten to white, and these are lighten to the lightest color. So if I have darken and lighten at the same time, I'm going to get some strange effects. I would highly suggest setting this to normal until you get used to the little world of colorization in Photoshop. Another way you could do this to get softer tones is go to a softer brush. Let's say I want to go in here and make really soft shadows. Well, I could choose a darker color, and I can have the opacity set to like 19%, and wherever two forms are meeting, I can just darken those images. This often leads to a very flat look, so I really don't like using this method too much, but you know, when you get into digital artwork, you're going to find that there's many different ways to do things. I sort of like the ability to go in here and lower my opacity and darken things. It builds texture. Okay, so like this builds a little higher value of texture to things. Alright, so we have lighten, darken, and I said there was an oddball one. Well, here if you set it to like hue and you use the same color, you're going to rank it across corresponding to that hue. If you choose a different color, like weird pink maybe, it's going to start ramping that towards the pink of that hue of that color. So it's pretty neat. You can make some really nice color changes in this area based upon the first color, and if you're just ranking the hue, it will complement that first color quite nicely. Alright, let's see what else. Oh yeah, the coup de grace. Wait, here's some snake skin, right? I just typed in monster something on a different page, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it. Okay, now what I could do is add some texture to all this. If I use the move tool, I can move it around. Let's say I make it as big as the head. And I set this to something like, oh, let's say soft light. Now I have some texture behind it. And this works for, you know, just all these. If I went into linear dodge add, it would make it pink. If I made it to multiply, it would darken it to the point of idiocy. So light and color. I like soft light when it's dealing with a texture over the top of things. And you can see wherever it's white anyway, it naturally just goes away, and I don't have to erase anything. One last trick. If you take this and now go image, let's go to move tool, hit apply. Let's take this texture and go image, adjustments, hue saturation. Well, if I play around with the hue, you'll see I can get a large variation of change on the color. If I look at the saturation or the darkness, so as long as I'm adjusting the color of this, it's adjusting the color of all this other stuff. And that stands true for everything in here. Vibrance, hue saturation, color balance, black and white, exposure, all these work the same way. Alright, so that is the 101 of being able to add, brighten, darken color onto an image and just kind of generally paint in an area. Enjoy.